Hi, I'm Geraint Wyn Davies, and I'm in good company with James Blendick and Stephen Russell. Jimmy, Stevie, yay!
Hey.
Hey.
Thanks for joining me. You know, I was thinking just before this that whenever I go to a social function in Stratford, whenever I see either one of you or both of you, it becomes a far better evening than it was going to be. So that makes this also the same thing. So I thank you guys very, very much for joining us on In Good Company. Jimmy, you've been in Stratford for how long?
From 85 to now, it's been about 33 years. But prior to that, I came to Stratford in 1967 after being graduating from the National Theatre School.
Who was running the theatre school when you were there?
Powis Thomas,
Powis, okay.
Jimmy Domville, and Jean Gascon.
And what was your first season at Stratford? What did it consist of?
Well, that was the first season in which I arrived, and all of a sudden they were doing Antony and Cleopatra, Richard III, Merry Wives of Windsor, and that was the year that Chris Plummer came, Alan Bates, Zoe Caldwell, Franny Highland. So it was quite an esteemed group of actors here.
You were introduced first to huge luminaries, but then you continued your relationship with Christopher particularly for quite a while, didn't you?
For some reason, you know, being a young kid I was then, I think I was only 25, he kind of took a liking to me. I don't know why, but he did. And we certainly built up a relationship from then on. And consequently, did several productions with him over the years.
Well, we, the three of us, have been in a couple with Chris, and we were all in New York doing the King Lear together at the Lincoln Center. And I remember some, let's just say, some ribald good times were had there. Mr. Russell, could you pick up the mantle, please?
Yes, there was some ribald times there. I think the one thing that I can remember the most is that I was sitting down in my dressing room, and at the Lincoln Center, it's 2 flights down. And I was listening to the monitor and realized that there was a problem, that I was not going to make it to the stage in time for a scene I had with a fellow actor who's sitting across from me now.
Yes.
But what he, in his wisdom, he decided to change a 2-hander into a monologue. And which I think we both found at the end of the evening that this worked better.
Well, I think if Shakespeare was alive, Stephen, he would have said, well done, you guys. That's a good adjustment, I think.
He would have said that to you. I would have been gardening.
That was funny. So, Jimmy, I don't know if you remember that occasion, but Stevie was, you know, Stephen was planning on gardening, I think, and decided to leave me as Edmund out on the balcony in the scene. Let's just say to fend for myself. It was one of my favorite things that has ever happened because I get to mention it to Stephen many times. I get to say, yeah, which not every time, but often.
I remember one night in New York, we went to a karaoke bar, all of us. And it was a rowdy place, and people would get up and sing and roar, and people weren't paying much attention to the person who was attempting to sing. But then all of a sudden, Mr. Blendick got up. And he started just quietly, because everybody else was rocking and rolling. And he started just quietly, and the place got quieter and quieter and quieter. And then he sang, the place was dead silent. And then it erupted into an applause that I dream about.
Oh, there you go. When we work together, Stephen has cause to, let's say, poke fun at some of my choices and things. When we did Henry V, Jimmy, back in late 80s, Stephen was playing Uncle, and I would be doing the Crispin Crispian speech. And I don't know if I got the Crispin Crispianuses, Crispin, whatever right, there or in the right order. And Stephen would be slightly facing upstage going, no. Oh, no, not quite. But I would be laughing inside. It was horrible. It was horrible. Stephen Russell is one of my nemesis on stage, and but I love him.
I think that you misinterpret. I was going, that is incredible. That is incredible.
No. Well, so Stephen, when did you first arrive in Stratford at the festival?
I believe it was in '72. I auditioned for Stratford in Calgary, where I had finished my stint in drama school, and I was hired as an apprentice. And by the time I arrived here, I was changed to a journeyman because I was playing a named part, Mark Codd in Love's Labour's Law, whose entire contribution to the evening is, "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but your mother, she says dead," and I go down the tunnel.
Yes.
I had to say this to the Queen. I completely blew the line the first time, went straight down the tunnel in disgust, and knew that I had found my place.
In the vault.
Yes.
In the vault. And Jimmy, when your first experience on the festival stage, would you say that you felt at home?
I did. I felt extremely comfortable. I mean, the stage, the thrust, the whole atmosphere of that theater didn't intimidate me at all. And I thought it would. I mean, I was quite nervous about coming into my first season. It was Michael Langham who was the artistic director. But I just immediately felt comfortable. I kind of felt at home.
And how did you find Stratford at that time, the town of Stratford back in the 60s?
I mean, it was a closed shop. I mean, there was nothing here. There was Elm's Cafe, and there was the hotel on the corner. We'd go to Elm's about 2 o'clock in the morning after partying all night and have some bacon and eggs and go home and sleep, and then back to rehearsals at 10.
Oh, wow. So it was a company thing then. The company was closer because there was less
very much so. There was a party in somebody's house every night because there was nowhere else to go.
What theaters were open then? Was it just the festival, or was the festival and the Avon?
Yeah, the two theaters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would both companies in both theaters would unite at the end of an evening?
Yes. And then we finally opened a bar up at the Avon, at the upstairs bar they had. So that became our meeting place after the shows. And then we would wander off to somebody's house later on.
Oh, magical times.
Oh.
And Stephen, when you came in '72, it was still just the Avon and the festival, wasn't it? Or was the Patterson open then?
Yes, the Patterson was open.
Okay. All right. And same for you. What was the town like when you first arrived in '72?
Well, it was just as Jimmy said, it was a lot smaller, and he has described pretty well the social life, but also the family at the festival was extraordinary. When I met Jimmy for the first time, the first thing that struck me about him, that there was an elegance and a grace. And I thought that is something to work towards. And if you needed, and this is the thing I found the most, is that with all the people, Nikki, Richard, Jimmy, there was everything. You had text with Mr. Rain. It was like a finishing school for me. Because going to university, you didn't get all of the technical stuff. So here, you had everyone. And as he said, at night, it was a tight evening.
The education continued after the performance. And I don't mean that flippantly. I mean, truly, you would continue learning from the senior members of the company after the show went down in the evening, in the bar, in the home, at the party. Just in terms of the way comportment, joy, history of what came before. Who were some of the folks when you first arrived?
Douglas Rain in Henry IV, Part 1, I was playing Hotspur, came to my dressing room after a show. And this is very early on. It may have been a preview. But he said, "Stephen, you dropped an ah." And I said, "I beg your pardon?" He said, "You dropped an ah." I said, "Did it hurt?" I didn't get a laugh back.
No.
He said, "I want to see you in my dressing room at the end of the show." And for the next 6 weeks, we went through all of my text.
Oh, fantastic.
And I'll get emotional, but that's who they all were. Butch, everyone. It was if anything and everything that you needed or wanted was there at your behest. And it was, as I say, it was like a finishing school of the closest, tightest people I know.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a nurturing, right? There's a
Oh.
nurturing that involved, and it's passing from player to player.
Each show that you did, you grew. Each performance that you did was watched, not necessarily criticized, but you were helped. And it was that kind of, I mean, for movement, for fencing, for everything.
Jimmy, how long were you here your first stint?
From 67 to 70.
Okay, so just before Stephen came.
Yeah.
And then you went all over. You went to the Guthrie, you went to Broadway, you went to Los Angeles. You had a good hunt around.
Martha and I were invited to become members of the Lincoln Center Company in 1971. John Hirsch was directing there as well. We both spent a season there. And then I went off to Minneapolis after that for 2-3 years. Then went to Broadway. Then came back to the Minnesota Theater, the Guthrie. Then came up to Toronto to do a couple of television shows for the CBC. Then I went out to Los Angeles and spent about 10 years there until 85. And then I came back to Stratford in 85. And I was just coming back for one season. But it turned out that I stayed another few decades.
Well, I think you stayed after 85 because I was coming in 86. So you just needed to know.
Oh, that's right. Of course.
You had to look after me. The two of you had to look after me. So God knows. Right. But in your time then, away, it's not as if, but this is almost a creative home for all of us in a way. You know, it's a hub. Did you find that your time here from 67 to 70 informed your time in Los Angeles on Broadway? Of course you would, and the Guthrie. And then did you find that your time in Los Angeles, etc., gave you something new to bring back here?
Yeah, I did. First of all, I realized I didn't want to do a lot of television.
Okay, yes.
It was so fast. And I didn't like that. I enjoyed the California itself, but you know, you're working, and then you're not working, and you're working, then you're not working. That was very, very hard on me. And so consequently, I would go to Winnipeg, San Diego, Washington, and do plays, you know, just to keep my sanity and to keep the craft going. But I don't poo-hoo Los Angeles totally, if you can really hook on to something. Like our friend Brian Dennehy.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Then it becomes a joy. But other than that, if you're not really doing what you really want to do, that's the part I didn't enjoy. I was
a golden rabbit that runs around that course very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And you're running, you're chasing.
Yeah. So that was it.
Interesting thing.
That's why I was so glad when I came back to Stratford, you know, even for that one season in 85, I thought, oh, what a breath of fresh air. And then, of course, I was asked to do seasons after that.
Many. Well, then, okay, I just want to do a Brian Dennehy thing because both Stephen and Jimmy, and indeed myself, were in Mary Stuart, which was a wonderful production. But two things involving Brian. One again with Stephen. When Jimmy and Brian and myself played three fellas who had to stand just back of center on the Tom Patterson stage and listen to the wonderful, huge argument between Queen Elizabeth and Mary. And during rehearsals, Jimmy, I don't know if you remember, but you, Brian, and myself, we just had chairs and we would not stand during that thing forever. We were the seated knights. Oh, Lord. That was, and Brian was hysterical, and you and Brian would look at each other and going, nah. And I'd go get us chairs and you'd sit down. And then Stephen was, other than playing other wonderful parts, was also understudying Brian in that production. And Brian left for a couple of performances, and Stephen had this wonderful speech that, you know, he was covering, and it was going, I think, beautifully, as well as that speech could possibly go. And I think Stephen just realized that it was going really well and stopped and probably thought, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, please take over the story. Please take over the story.
No, that's exactly true. I thought this is going awfully well. And the moment I thought that, I went completely blank. And I had no idea what was coming next. And I turned to Shauna, who was the queen, and said, I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I'm astonished and I know not what to say. And I sat down.
Which was genius, except that the next person who might have spoken was me. So, so Stephen has a way of tossing you a ball, and it's actually a water balloon, and you go, oh! But, that was wonderful.
Rock with a chain.
The chain, a ball and chain. There you go. Okay, Jimmy, most enjoyable roles.
Cyrano, which you have played.
Yes. Well, by the way, I'm just Jimmy Blendick Light, by the way. I'm just doing all your stuff. I'm just Jimmy Blendick Light. I'm just doing all the stuff.
I noticed that, you know.
Yeah, I'm just following you. I'm just following you. That's all.
Henry in Lion in Winter, Bizarro in Royal Hunt of the Sun,
Royal Hunt of the Sun.
Falstaff.
Which one?
Then the Henrys. Did those twice. Sir Toby.
Oh, of course, Sir Toby, yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed doing Titus Andronicus. I found it a wonderful journey in experimenting what to do in that situation, you know, of sleight of hand and so to speak. And we kind of, I think we nailed it to a certain degree, but I know a lot of people in the audience would get very sick. Some people would run out, bring up because of the incident with the chopping off of the hand. Yeah,
I've had audience members be sick and run out, but for different reasons when I'm performing. Slightly different. But and Stephen, for you,
well,
greatest hits.
The Henry IV, my first role. Well, actually, it's the role that my mother finally acknowledged the fact that yes, you are an actor. But it was, you know, it was the amount I learned from Douglas and the schooling that I got from him that gave me a year's worth of confidence to go on that stage and do. And it's a lot of work. I'm sometimes call myself a lazy actor because the shortest way is the easiest way. And Richard II, because
Right.
it was a role that I was really young for, but there was Richard and Nikki, there was three of us who were playing the role. So there again, it was what you learned. And I think that that's what I'm learning right now, saying this out loud to you two, is that acting is much better if you learn from it. The Elephant Man, I got called to go and play in Hamilton. And I thought, no, I'm 6'3". He is a gnarled person, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And I had gone over it, and Alan Scarf was in it, and Pat Collins was in it, and so it was a heavy-duty thing. But then I just listened to Treves' opening speech, which describes the Elephant Man, and I got into a position physically and mentally, and it became one of the most fulfilling because of the completeness of both the text and the role itself, that it was very demanding.
And we've all been in Hamlet together, actually. Thoughts on productions that you've done of Hamlet, Jimmy?
Well, the first time I was in it was John Hurst's production with Kenny Welsh playing Hamlet, and I was playing Horatio. At the end of the play, Hamlet and Horatio are fighting over the poisoned cup. And we're tugging on it, and all of a sudden he let go, and the cup had a bit of a sharp edge on it. And I just, boom, split my lip. And I was holding him in my arms. We just kept going. We didn't stop the show. The blood is dripping on his face. And I'm saying, good night, sweet prince. And immediately the curtain went down. Everybody applauded. They thought it was part of the action.
Of course, it's a beautiful choice.
They whisked me off to the hospital real quick because I might have had a hair lip. So you can actually see the scar right there.
Oh, cool. How many productions of Hamlet do you think you've been in, Jimmy?
3.
And Stephen?
Yeah, I've been in 3 as well. And one of the ones I was in was when Nikki and Richard Minette were sharing the role of Hamlet, and I was playing Horatio. I'm getting ready to go on, and all of a sudden, Richard's on stage with Ophelia, and from the back of the audience you hear, "Manette, you're a bullshit actor."
Oh my goodness, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And all of a sudden, it went dead quiet, and it was like that kind of a sound, and all of a sudden, those two on stage started again and did their vows, and it was electric.
Ooh, I bet.
You know, so I mean, there was that one. It turned out all right, and the other one I remember was that Nikki, who was playing the other Hamlet, and I was Horatio. The last part of the play, "Good Night, Sweet Prince, Sing Me to Thy Rest," and I picked them up in my arms, and this was at the Avon Theater, and we had a set built for it to look exactly like the festival, so that it was crossing up those steps and then up to the balcony. And I carried him up and turned, and the spotlights came onto his little face, and I put him down, and I turned to exit, and I exited the wrong way, and I stepped off the balcony.
No!
Oh, my goodness.
When the lights came up, there was our hero, Horatio, crawling off stage on his hands and knees with no wind, heaving. He had
Oh my
knocked the wind-
goodness.
I
Oh
knocked
my
the wind
gosh.
out of myself, got off stage, and still I made the curtain call.
Oh, so Jimmy's slicing his face open. You're falling off balconies. I'm telling you, you think it wouldn't have been Hamlet. It would have been one of the other shows that he wrote. Guys, I just want to thank you so much for joining me. And you know what I'm looking forward to is when things are more relaxed and we can indeed gather in the near future, I hope. But Stephen, love to you. Jimmy, love to you. Thanks. This is Geraint Wyn Davies, and I've been in great company with Jimmy Blendick and Stephen Russell. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Gare.
Thank you.